there are still people coming in, so I'm going to just click on a few more of these. They keep coming, so it's kind of hard to focus and start. But nonetheless, I will call the August 19th meeting of the Windham Southeast School District order at 6:06 p.m. We have a large agenda tonight, action-packed with lots of interesting activities and potentially several actions. And I just want to remind people that action items, on any action item, we'll hear from the board first and then we'll take public comment. On reports, because we've got so much business, if there are a lot of public comments, I'm going to ask people to wait until the end of the business, the time for people to, the time when people can speak to items that are not on the agenda, but also to any of the reports. Specific to school reopening, if you're a parent or a staff member, the best thing you can do at this point, the people that have the most information and can provide you the most up-to-date, accurate information and the most support in response to your questions, is to contact the schools themselves. Contact your principal, contact the central office with those specific questions. We continue to prepare, the administrators continue to work long hours every day. The teachers will be back next week for, I believe, 7 days of preparation before the scheduled opening on September 8th. A determination that are actually prepared and feel like we're ready to have learners and adults in the schools will be, ultimately that will be determined on September 2nd. We're proceeding with the expectation that we'll be in good shape to open, but we're not going to be making any decisions about that tonight. We're still waiting for more information. We're waiting to be fully informed. And so there's really not a lot of support or a lot of information that we can provide people tonight that would be meaningful. So again, I encourage you to contact your principals if you're a parent or a staff member. They are the ones that are best able to respond to those questions. The first item on the agenda, the first item after call to order, I'm going to actually move down the agenda a little bit, and we're going to start with the clerk's report. We have minutes from July 15th, July 27th, August 5th, and August 6th to approve. Would ask the board member to unmute and please move the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Thomas. And could I have a second, please?
Second, Liz.
Thank you, Liz. Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of July 15th, July 27th, August 5th, and August 6th. So all those in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, it sounds like the minutes have passed. Next thing is communications, and the communications that we received, that I received and that other board members forwarded to me this week will all be addressed in the process of the meeting. So I'm not going to itemize any of the topics that came up because they're all going to be addressed. And so that brings us to recognition of visitors.
I apologize, Dave. There are apparently people still waiting to get in.
That should be everybody. Okay. Everyone who has been on the list is in. So I think, and unless you have a better idea, I'm going to go ahead and proceed, and we'll this will be recorded, so we'll be able to reproduce it for anyone that's not able to participate. So at this point, I'd like to recognize board member Ann Beekman and director of the Windham Regional Career Center, Nancy Weiss, for a special presentation.
Hi. You may have heard me regularly move to adjourn this meeting in the following way. Mr. Chairman, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn. This is an honor that I inherited from a member of the BUHS District Number 6 Board, Ruth Barton, who is, I think the best word to describe her would be a pistol. And I am so glad to have had the opportunity to serve on a board that had her in its arsenal. Ruth is honest, straightforward, and always put the concerns of our students first. Ruth, I would like to thank you for everything that I learned from you. And I know that it has made me a better servant of the people that I serve. Now, when it was decided that we should do something to honor Ruth for her service to the children of this district, I contacted Nancy Weiss from the Windham Regional Career Center, and she was on it. I brought her, we need a tribute, and she came back with a pair of wonderful ideas, and I'd like to give her the opportunity to explain them to everybody. Nancy?
Good evening. Good evening. This is Nancy Weiss, and I have been with the Windham Regional Career Center for 2 years. My first year was as the special needs coordinator, and this year as director. And through that time, I have gotten or had the great honor of getting to know Ruth Barton. And she has brought with her just an amazing dedication to students within our district, within our communities, and children as a whole. And I was honored to be asked to come up with something to honor her. And so I discussed it with Joyce Rathbun, who has been our administrative assistant at the Career Center for years. I will not go into how many years, and has known Ruth extensively. And she came up with the idea of a bench that will sit outside of our TIC building, our industrial trades building. And that will be designed by our manufacturing and our construction group of students this fall, and will be installed. And at that point, we will have a ceremony to install it. As well, we have concluded that we will establish the Ruth Barton Vermont Citizenship Award that honors a student that embodies the honor, dignity, honesty, and work ethic that Ruth has modeled throughout her life. Ruth is truly a citizen of Vermont and of the United States and of the world. And that citizenship cannot pass without being honored. So we are excited to have this opportunity. I will move forward working with Frank and Andy to determine what that award will look like. But that is on my agenda for as soon as possible. We've been a little wrapped up in starting school, but we will take care of this right away, and we will make sure that we do everything we can to honor this wonderful person who has done so much.
Right. Thank you. Sean Murphy?
Thank you very much. I'll read what I wrote. Ruth Barton of Dummerston served for 15 years as a director on the BUHS District Number 6 Board. It is fitting and deserved that the WRCC is establishing the Ruth Barton Vermont Citizenship Award. Ruth brought many attributes to the District Number 6 Board, and I would like to mention a few. Ruth is a graduate of BUHS and then served on the board of her high school with pride. Ruth always went the extra mile on the board, serving on countless hiring committees, spending days interviewing candidates. As clerk of the board, Ruth recorded countless meeting minutes. Ruth served with near perfect attendance to board meetings. If she did miss one, you knew that she was busy making pies for the Dummerston Fall Festival. Ruth's commitment to the WRCC is important and admirable. We will not forget Ruth's meeting motion to adjourn, and this baton has been ably passed on to her friend, Ann Beekman. Quote, and this is just what Ann just said. Mr. Chairman, there being no further business, I move that we adjourn, unquote. Thank you, Ruth Barton, and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. I see that there are several of Ruth's colleagues here, and I just want to remind you, if you haven't been to one of these meetings, at the bottom of your screen, there's a participants, or maybe it's reactions. There are a couple of icons, and if you click on the, I think it's the participants one, it might be reactions, you'll find a little raise hand icon, and that's how you can let me know if you have something you'd like to say. I do have a video I'd like to share. The sound is a little low, so you may want to adjust your speakers up for the next couple of minutes.
Good evening, I'm Steve Perrin, and I'm thrilled to have been invited to say a few words about Ruth Barton and her service to our community. I've had the pleasure to know Ruth for over 20 years. My first work with Ruth was as a parent. As a parent, she was a strong advocate for her son, would ask great questions, would always partner with me to make sure that things were going well for him. She would ask great science-related questions, and I'm really grateful that she pushed me to be a better teacher. Ruth is a person of strong principle, and she comes to a conversation with strong opinion and conviction that she wants to do what is best for the children in the school. Despite those opinions, I've always found that Ruth has been able to enter a conversation with an open mind. She's been able to listen to various points of view, and she's also been great at asking questions that challenge and questions that move a conversation forward. Ruth has no agenda other than to see what is best for the kids and what is best for our community. Ruth's service to the community spans decades. Outside of the high school, Ruth also has been known to make legendary apple pies every year for Dummerston and has always been a strong supporter of her local community. On behalf of Brattleboro Union High School, the faculty, the staff, and the other administrators here, I just want to thank you, Ruth, for your years of service. Your commitment to our kids has made our school a better place, and we will continue to look to you and your ideals for guidance as we have conversations and as we continue to look and determine what is best for all of our children and for all of our community. Thank you, Ruth. You're awesome. We love you.
I hope that you were able to hear that fairly well. Lori Cartwright, nice to see you again.
Hi, David. Thank you for inviting Ruth's former board colleagues to this meeting. I know they're all public and we're always invited, but thank you for making sure that we're aware of this honor. And I just wanted to say, I was trying to remember how many years I was on the BUHS number 6. No, I was not on the BUHS number 6 board. I was on the
town board. Yeah.
I was on the town board, but then I was also on the it was the BUHS number 6 board. Okay, great. For a total of 11 years, so several years for sure with Ruth, and it was always such an honor to serve with her. She's such a, as Steve and Sean and you have mentioned, and Anne, she's a pistol and an inspiration, and it was my honor to serve with her. And I won't take any more time from the meeting. I just wanted to thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Ruth, for all of your work and dedication to our students in our district.
Thank you, Lori. Any other comments specific to the Ruth Barton Award? Ricky Davidson.
Hi, David. Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to serve with Ruth Barton as on the BUHS number 6 board for a number of years. And as somebody who was not originally from Brattleboro, even though I feel like this is the place that is my home and I've been here longer than anywhere in my life, it was always wonderful to have Ruth's history of things, understanding of the community, and her passion for young people. I know that's been said a few times, but you know, she was always at the bare bones, what's in the best interest of young people, and was willing to be the loudest voice in the room for them when somebody else couldn't be. And I really appreciated her time and her effort that she put into everything and her practicality about things. I'm glad that the Career Center is the place where she's getting really recognized, because she was a firm supporter and believer in technical education, and that not everybody was meant to go to college, and some people were meant to, you know, roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty every day. And she really was a strong believer in that. And I was very honored to serve with her, and I am so honored that she's doing this. And Ruth, thank you for all of your years. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ricky. Other comments?
I see that Woody has his hand up.
Oh, I can't see it. Go ahead, Woody. Unmute yourself, please.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of low tech, but
That's okay.
just briefly, I want to echo the comments that have already been made. I do want to make one correction for Ann and Sean both. When we adjourned the meeting, it was not Mr. Chairman, it was Mr. Chairman. There being no other business, right? Am I right?
I often do it that way.
You do, that's right. Well, Ruth and I were on 2 boards together for 15 years. One, the BUHS board, and then the Regional Career Center Advisory Board. And we frequently sat next to each other, and we frequently disagreed. Well, we occasionally disagreed on things. It's pretty clear what Ruth's opinion was on things. You didn't have to ask her clarification questions. But she was devoted, as everybody said, to the kids. She was a person when we'd walk out of the meeting, we would be laughing and smiling, and our meetings were actually kind of fun, even though we had a lot of serious business. And I respect Ruth a tremendous amount for her dedication to both those boards, and I think it's truly fitting that we honor her in this manner. Thanks.
Thank you, Woody. Any other comments? Well, I'm very grateful to Ann for coming up with this idea and for recognizing right away that Nancy would be the person to figure out what would be the most meaningful thing to recognize her with at the Career Center. And I'm really glad we were able to put this together. So thank you, particularly Ann and Nancy, for the work that you did, and for Ruth's colleagues for coming to the meeting. I see Jody Normando would like to speak. Go ahead, Jody.
Well, I was going to speak on something else, David, but as a neighbor and a resident of Dummerston and a friend of Ruth and a high school friend of Ruth's, you know, everything that's been said is right on. So, but after that, I was going to just ask you,
Not now, Jody, please wait. I'd rather not. We're honoring Ruth right now, if you don't mind waiting.
Okay, well, I thought you were through. I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, when we're done, we're going to go on with the agenda.
Okay, but you kind of skipped over visitors and communications, so.
I mentioned the communications that we had received and recognition, and everybody's a visitor. I wouldn't consider you a visitor. Visitor is someone who's been invited to address the board. So if you wouldn't mind waiting until, if it's not about the agenda, wait until the public comment on non-agenda items. Thank you. Okay, next is committee reports. Sean, do we have a finance committee report?
There isn't. I've had communication that we will probably have a finance meeting on the 2nd of September prior to the regular meeting, either that on the 1st of September, which is the day before our regular next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And well, since you're here, Personnel Committee, is that yours? That's not you?
No, it's, it would be Kelly.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if Kelly is here yet. No, she's not. Okay, so I don't believe the Personnel Committee has met. Policy and Amendment Committee also has not met since the last report. Programmatic and Performance Equity Committee has received most of the information for the Title IX report. I see that Emily is not here, and since yesterday was her due date, I think we know why. So I'll hope for the best for Emily and her husband and the new child. And but anyway, the Title IX report will be is rescheduled for October 21st. So I'm certain we'll have all the information by then, and we'll make a full report on the Title IX findings. The Climate Crisis Task Force has a report, and I believe has some action items it needs the board to take so they can continue their work. We will take a much deeper dive into the task force report. I think I have it for October 7th. I'm not sure, but it's on the schedule for October. I'm leaving the September meetings open because of school reopening. I think that's going to take up most of our meeting time, so I'm scheduling things out past that. So I'd like to ask Thomas if he would tell us a little bit about the report, and I'll put it up here for people to see. And then if Thomas, you could tell us what items you think the board needs to take action on.
Yeah, so the idea was tonight, if we had the time, that we would look at this completely and either vote to adopt it or to just start debate on adopting it. Since it's going to be a pretty lengthy thing, I guess we're going to wait till October, but at the very least, I wanted to talk about the 5 main points of this that we would be agreeing to do going forward. This is a 7-page document, which maybe we can put up on the site for people to look at ahead of time and get acquainted with. But basically, for the past almost year, the Climate Crisis Task Force has been meeting to assess where we are as a district and what our impact is on climate change currently, and then what sort of specific steps we could take. In this proposal, the 5 main points that we were going to agree to if we agree to this, I'll read those parts. First part, significantly reduce consumption. The current climate crisis is the result of extreme consumption of fossil fuels, animals, and a variety of other natural resources. A societal policy of economic and material growth has put our survival in jeopardy. While sustainable consumption will help slow the climate crisis, only a drastic reduction in overall consumption will confront this crisis in a meaningful way and save our planet for future generations. The district recognizes this reality and adopts a policy of significant reduction in consumption across the board. Part 2, protect our students, staff, and our community from environmental harm. The district will eliminate the use of potentially toxic and harmful substances. Point 3, prepare our students for the future. The district will provide a high quality education that supports concepts and practices of environmental and social responsibility and sustainability. Point 5, preserve current and future resources. The district will adopt practices and operations that balance environmental and social responsibility to protect and enhance the future quality of life. And finally, 5, a continual review of implementation. The WSESD Climate Crisis Task Force will meet monthly to review the progress on these goals, with a progress report due to the full board at least every year. So it goes on with, after this commitment, if we adopt it, certain ways that it could be implemented, things we've researched that could lead us to doing something substantial, not minor reforms, but a a significant change in outlook on how we address the climate. So you mentioned possibly, because we had some people who were interested in coming and giving their point of view. Do you want to do that later, or would you like to do that now?
No, I think it would be good to do now.
Okay, I know Kurt's here. Kurt's new to the task force. Paul's here as well. Paul's been on the task force from the beginning. Tim's here. He's on as well. I don't know if anybody else, I'm not aware of anybody else being in attendance tonight.
Okay.
But Kurt, Tim, or Paul, if you have any ideas, anything you want to throw in, now would be the time.
Just a reminder, as I said at the beginning, we have a very large agenda. So if you please be really concise in your comments, say what you need to say quickly.
We'll go into depth in October.
Yeah, we're going to have lots of time to go into deeper. Thank you.
Look, Kurt, I don't know if you know how you can press the red, the blue hand, and you can raise your hand, or if David sees you.
Yeah, go ahead. I see you're unmuted, Kurt. Go ahead.
You will like this, David. I ask for a motion that we continue the debate in October.
We don't need it. It's already on the agenda, Kurt. It's not necessary, and we don't take motions from the floor anyway. It's not an annual meeting.
Right. I was suggesting someone else would make that motion.
It's unnecessary.
And it seems it's already been raised that we're not going to talk about it completely now. Since we're not going to talk about it completely and thoroughly, I'm asking for a motion that we talk about it completely and thoroughly later. And you wanted brevity, so I'm done.
Thank you. I'm going to rule that out of order, and we'll move on. Tim or Paul?
No, I have nothing to say. We'll talk about it in October.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Okay.
Sorry, and just to let you know, since we have the additional time, our next meeting is going to be September 15th. Since now we have a little bit more time, and we're probably going to do another, since we have a little bit of time, see if anything else has to be changed or added. And Paul had some ideas on people to invite to give their points of view on how we could implement it properly.
Great, thank you. If I didn't say this already, the report is attached to this evening's agenda, and I believe you'll find that it also attached on the website. So you should be able to access it on the website. It's not the most intuitive way to find it, but that's where it is for now. And the Communications Council, which is coming up shortly, actually is coming up next, may have something to add about that. The Communications Council, I believe that Michelle is not able to be with us tonight. So I'm wondering, Robin, could you give us a brief update about the report, and if there's anything on here that needs, I think I'm gonna put it up as well. And if there's anything on here that needs board action, if you could tell us a little bit about the report, and then what you need action so that you can continue to make progress. If you're willing. If not, I'll do what I think it might be, but you probably have a better sense of what action's needed.
Yeah, I can. I didn't realize I was going to be presenting anything, so I'm sorry.
I know. Sorry.
Yes, I'm out of my house right now, but I can try and do this as undisturbedly as we can get through it. The meeting was me, Michelle, and Jamie, and yourself, and we were talking about ways to make the community more aware of the meetings, the board's meetings, and other actions. So we had 3 ideas to support that. One was that there could be an email list of people that receive the notice of the meetings that all community members could sign up for, and there would be an invitation sent out at the beginning of each school year and maybe one other time in the school year to invite people if they would like to sign up for the email list. All parents, all teachers and staff, and then community members would just be as they found out about it or through coming to the meetings. It could be posted in the chat of every meeting if anyone wanted to sign up, like on a Google Doc. And then that could just be a list that central office could blast out every agenda of the meetings too, and people could self-select if they wanted every meeting, every committee meeting, or just the board meetings, or don't send me anything. The second thing was to see if there was some way that we could collect people's experiences anonymously, because I think that can be a hurdle with people wanting to communicate that don't feel comfortable necessarily doing it in a meeting like this, or even through email to specific board members. So that was something that the board could explore to see if they were interested in doing that, or had a good framework for creating that. And then the third thing, which we do need the board to vote on, is to approve a social media presence for the board that would just be telling about meetings, sharing the agenda summaries that have been attached to the recent agendas, and creating like Facebook events and stuff like that for the board meetings, just to get it more visible and widely available. And you can see from the attendance at the last few meetings that suddenly there is quite a bit of interest in people coming to these meetings. So this would just be a way to make it more widely and equitably known, rather than just the people who happen to that week click on the WSESU page or be invited by specific board members to come. I think that's everything.
Great, thank you, Robin. The again, this will be as with the climate crisis recommendations. We'll take this up in much more detail in October. I think so. For going, and obviously there needs to be some conversation about it. It seems like the request, what we need is a motion to approve the creation by Communications Council members of social media outlets representing the WSESD school board. It's pretty well described here. We would have to, we'd have to review it, and it would come back to us before implementing. So it's not something that's going to be, it's going to happen, and the board's not going to have another look at it. I think it's important to, again, emphasize what Robin said. It's going to share information that mirrors website information and publicized communications, and it will have minimal, the social media outlets will have minimal direct public interaction and only direct the public to information sources. The subjective, personal, or opinions may be contributed in various ways, but well, anyway, it's not going to be a place where witch hunts begin, which would be the first thing I would expect to hear.
I just wanted to mention, I think there's a typo in that. Actually, it was supposed to say no opinions, subjective explanations, or personal reflections may be contributed.
Oh, that's important to know.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay. Oh, great. It didn't, because it wasn't consistent with the public interaction and direct public to the information. Good. So we'll amend that. We'll fix that. So anyway, I would ask if we have a board member that would move to approve the creation by the me. Let me. It was me. It looks like Liz moves and Jackie seconds. Yeah. Thank you. And is there any discussion by the board? Oh, excellent.
My only question is, I didn't hear, did Jackie move it and who seconded it?
Liz moved it. I saw her first.
Okay.
And Jackie seconded it.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, hearing none, all those in favor, please unmute and signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? Great, thank you. The motion passed. Great, the Communications Council took a long time to get reformed, and we've got a really astonishing team there. It's really exciting to see things moving so quickly. The next is the board.
Can I just ask, what you just voted on was that you approved a creation of a draft social media page for the board?
Yeah, or a number of them if they're going to be different kinds, and just bring it back to us and we'll approve it and figure out how to put it up and how to pay for it and all that stuff.
Okay.
Great. So back to work. Thanks, Robin. So the Board Diversity Equity Committee has asked Thomas again to come back and talk a little bit about what they've been doing, and then there are two specific things that I think they're asking for the board to take action on.
Yeah, so we haven't met since the last meeting. We'll be meeting on Monday at, I forget offhand. We'll be meeting Monday. And now I don't have the document up that was sent to us, but I believe you do. There was basically something that we would ask for any time related to hiring to see how we're doing specifically and to
let me pop that up. Can you see that? It's very small.
We can see it, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, there are 4 questions before approving new hires, and you can see them. How many applicants? How many were Black, Indigenous, or other people of color? Is the proposed hire one of those people? And most importantly, I think, is what specific efforts were made to attract qualified Black, Indigenous, or other people of color qualified candidates. And so this is something that I don't know if Carrie is still with us, but this is one of the things that she mentioned when we talked about the, when we made the commitment a few meetings ago to anti-racist and diversity and social justice work, was having regularly questioning the actions and the efforts and the work being done. So this is really consistent with that. And the other one, Thomas?
I'm not familiar with the other one. This was the only one I knew.
Oh, this was, we've heard from, I think, one provider of implicit bias and diversity diversity training.
Yeah,
we know of 3 others, and I just found out of another. So now we have 5.
Okay, so we talked with somebody in the last meeting who gave us options, and the next meeting we're going to be speaking with more, and then we're going to just make our decision on which one's the best for the board and the administration. Yep. Sorry, I didn't know what you were referring to.
Yeah. Well, and what I added here, and we probably shouldn't move on it until the committee's had a chance to support it. So I think what I'd like is refer that back to the committee, because I added consultation with the diversity coordinator and with the staff, the SD and SU Diversity and Equity Committee as well, in terms of identifying the best way to go ahead with the training for the board administrators.
So we're going to be going over all this, and now I remember Monday at 4:30.
Okay. So do we need to take any action at this point?
I don't believe we do. I think we're just going to discuss it at the meeting.
Okay, great.
The committee meeting.
Great, thanks, Thomas. So next is
hey, Dave.
SU board. Yes, Wendy.
Sorry to interrupt. As chair, I ask you, when you make a motion, can you reread the motion before you vote on it? Because otherwise, sometimes it's hard for me to pull from,
Yep, I'll send it to you. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Let's see. So next is the SU board. Carrie, are you with us? And I don't think the SU board is, but anyway, so we'll be all right. And then leadership council reports. And again, I want to emphasize, as I said at the very beginning, we have a very packed agenda. So I hope that leadership councils will make brief presentations. The leadership council policy and practices and expectations will be on the agenda on October 7th to see if we can't get a little more consistency and a little more clarity in terms of how they should be operating and how the membership is determined and what the goals and activities are. So again, if there are leadership councils, please unmute yourselves and give us a brief report.
I could go first. The Guilford Leadership Council met on August 14th, last Friday. There were 11 individuals in attendance, and it was an action-packed meeting. I gave some of the information from the WSESD board, specifically the document that we just discussed about climate change. And also then John Gagnon gave a detailed report of reopening. And a couple of the highlights was that Guilford is actually going to have the highest percentage of remote students starting in the fall at 44% remote. And that's the highest for the district of all the schools, 58% hybrid. So John has worked it all out. Very interesting that there will be some sharing between different schools within the district. So it was really informational and quite detailed and action-packed. So.
Thanks, Sean. I think Andy is going to update us a little bit about the interacting of the staff in different, well, it's okay, in different buildings. Give us a little bit fuller report on that. It is a new development. As is everything we're doing right now, a new development. Great, thanks, Sean. Other reports from leadership councils? Oh, Sean, or I'm sorry, Tim, I saw you're unmuted and I think I just muted you. Were you going to report on the Oak Grove? Tim, and did I mute you again?
There.
Oh,
can you
good.
hear me?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sorry I messed you up.
That's okay. Oak Grove is focusing on building a virtual community. To do so, Mary Kaufman, Principal Kaufman, is going to work with others to build, to create a video presentation so parents, kids can see on the video presentations what a healthy screening looks like, what the new classrooms look like, you know, just to get a sense of what it's going to be like when the school opens. We also talked about what to do to involve families with students who are high risk, those vulnerable students, how to get them involved in the how to build support for them. And Mary is going to talk to Kim Rose to try to get more details on the what if question. What if a child comes down with COVID? She understands the protocol right now is, of course, to talk to the Department of Health and the AOE, but she's trying to get a better hold on what will happen if that happens. That's about it.
Great, thank you, Tim. Any other leadership council reports? Again, as I said, on the 7th, we'll go over. Oh, Ruby, there you are. Go ahead. Thank you.
Ruby McAdoo from Putney Central School. We also, I will not go into it, but we talked a lot about school opening, and Herb gave us a lot of information. The 3 things I would mention are that we have kicked off an equity and inclusion book discussion group that's collaborating with the town of Putney. We just had the kickoff this week, and every month there'll be a different book that kind of aligns with what the staff are reading amongst themselves. And so that's very exciting. We had quite a few people show up, so that was good. And then sometime in the future, we've put in a formal request for this board to talk about discretionary funds for the leadership councils. And we're working to get a mission and vision statement that we can put on our school's website, and that will just define the focus of our work. So that's it.
Thank you, Ruby. Any other? Ricky, do we have a UHS report? Thank you.
Yeah, hi. I didn't know Kelly wasn't going to be here, and I just happened to be here anyway. So the Leadership Council for the high school has been meeting every 2 weeks all summer. It's been really good. We've done a lot of, as other people said, talk about school reopening plans. In addition to that, we're looking at ways to sort of talking about diversity, about diversifying our membership and reaching out and trying to get more people of all kinds of different groups to be part of the Leadership Council for the high school, so that all kinds of groups are represented within the Leadership Council. And our other big project is as we're starting to look at the idea of and putting together a PTA for the high school, which is something that in my history our high schools never had. And everyone agrees that it's something that can be really helpful to getting parents more engaged with their teenagers and what the teenagers are doing. So we're looking at that process.
Great, thank you, Ricky. And also thank you for sharing your survey results. It's really,
and we know it was a small survey number, but it was right after school got out, and a lot of people just were like, it's summer vacation.
we're done, yeah.
Thank you. Something.
Great, thank you. Are there any others? I don't see any. Okay, next is administrative reports, and I want to again point out that I'm asking for people to hold because of the amount of business that we have to cover, I'm asking for people to hold their comments and questions until the end of business. This is a report, and our responsibility as a board is to make sure the schools are well run and that our learners are learning. We need to hear from all parts of the community to effectively represent you and your values, so we'll continue to provide broad access, and there will be opportunities to be heard, and we will do our best to respond as fully as we can, and to engage the administrators as well to respond to your questions and your concerns. We're not charged with running the schools or being intimately informed of the details, so please, if you have specific questions about your student or your job, if you're a staff member, please direct those to the building principals. So with that having been said, I would ask Andy to share his administrative report.
Great, thank you, David. So I'll try to be brief tonight. I can say that, starting last week, we released an extensive amount of knowledge. Our continuity of learning team completed their, I would say completed is a rough word. We have a living draft of our continuity of learning document that describes the modes for hybrid and remote learning, as well as with a number of tools embedded in those documents. We are going to be holding a teacher question and answer or staff question and answer forum tomorrow in order to provide any more feedback for people that they may need. We know in our organization of the plans, we have to really focus on what are we going to do with our most vulnerable students and how are we going to support those students. And so much of our work has been oriented around that and identifying what are the ways that we can continue to those, whether our students in a hybrid in-person learning or a remote setting, how can we best support our most vulnerable population. So as we speak, items are being populated on the district website as they're completed. And so if you look at the district website, there's an FAQ page regarding the COVID-19 reopening. There is a reopening at a glance document. There is a tab for bus registrations. And the reason why we're doing a bus registration tab is in order to be able to provide a physically distanced bus ride for our students. And that's so that our bus providers can plan adequate transportation and making sure that those students that absolutely need the transportation are provided the safest way to school as possible. We have information as well about school meals for those that are both in-person and remote students, and as well as a previously communicated safety document. So staff were provided an extensive amount of information last week. We'll continue to update information as we go. We will have a family reopening guidebook coming out in the coming days, and so that's in its finishing with the finishing touches on it. One of the big questions that has been coming up is the idea of what are we doing with staff requests for accommodations to work remotely. And so the total number of staff that had made requests for accommodations was approximately, as of this afternoon, was 46 staff members requested to have some level of remote accommodation. The total number of people meeting those requests, we were able to meet almost all of those. And so one of the worries we had in previous meetings was, what are we going to do if we have too many staff members that need to have some level of a remote teaching accommodation, we were able to meet most of those items and most of those aspects. The total number of student requests that we've received as of this week was 589 students were requesting remote learning opportunities. As you heard, that was a range upwards of 40 some odd % up at Guilford School, and some of our other elementary schools were on the low end of 15%. So it kind of settled somewhere in the 25 to 30% range, which is reflective of what we're seeing in national trends. In terms of looking at the number of accommodation requests for teaching with remote instruction, one of the concerns that we had was that we were trying to figure out how do we look at if we have multiple requests from the same building. And so I was able to work with, and our human resources director was able to work with our union leadership to identify a consistent and fair practice that would be applied in all situations. As we said, in this case, we were fortunate that we didn't really have to go down that road because the numbers of classes and cohorts that we were able to put together matched the need. So one of the things that Sean referenced earlier is the combining of resources. And in the development of the plans for our remote students, we wanted to make sure we did a couple of things and we did them well. One, we wanted to make sure we provided students with a robust remote learning experience. We wanted to do so in a way that wasn't just saying, okay, you get Google Classroom and that's all you get. You get Google Classroom, Lexia, and Dreambox, and that's your day. Maybe you'll have a teacher touch base with you, maybe you won't. We wanted to make sure we were able to go beyond that. And so that was a real wrestling point that many of our elementary principals had, as well as our curriculum and instruction team, because the numbers in terms of each site to be able to make that work weren't necessarily feasible. We didn't have the economies of scale with a large, when you have a 1,200 student school and you can meet things, you can meet them a little differently and more effectively. When you have smaller populations and you may have 1 or 2 teachers in a building that can provide remote instruction, we have to think things differently. And so that led to the pairing of schools. Through a significant and incredible amount of teamwork, our elementary schools, as well as BAMS, have partnered up with all our communities. And so the pairings will look like at K6 Academy School, because it's large enough to sustain its own level of remote instruction, will be kind of individually based. But Green Street, Oak Grove, and Dummerston will be paired, or partnered rather, to provide one coherent level of remote instruction K through 6. And Guilford, Putney, and Vernon will be also grouped together to provide K through 6 remote instruction. BAMS, Putney, and Dummerston will be joined together for middle school. In the high school, those classes will be scheduled as requested. And one of the tricky parts we're working out with the high school is the duty coverage, especially in those hard to fill areas. And in cases where we may have a teacher needing an accommodation to be remote, if it's a very, very hard to fill subject area or certification area that's difficult, we're trying to figure out what the duty rotation looks like to cover that area, to cover that class, so that teacher can have that accommodation at the same time as she's remote, but if kids are in the building. So when we looked at the reasons for this remote pairing, we looked at economies of scale. So these single school cohorts would lead to a large grade span, for both in-person and remote instruction. And so this was one of the best ways to do that, to address those needs. We wanted district coherence. And so with remote teaching, we can, it does require a distinct set of skills upon the part of the educator. And by joining the schools, it allows us to also deliver more effective professional development to those teachers that are in remote settings. And we were also able to create, using COVID money, a stipended teacher leader position to help coordinate that remote work. And so we're not forgetting about their needs to have a key contact person to help them gel together. And then that level of coaching support we're aligning as well, especially at the younger grades. And so where those kind of critical issues around how do we do remote instruction most effectively, we're aligning our coaching support, especially at grades K through 12. We also felt this allowed us to give us the best flexibility in a return to normal whenever that point comes to us. And then the last update, with special education, our model continues to evolve. Shelley's been working incredibly hard with Liz Dimmick and the special education teachers about what does this model look like. Again, economies of scale have an impact on both the buildings as well as the step that we're going in at. We're entering schools at step 2, which is the most restrictive in-person setting that we can. Under step 2 guidance from what we've seen, as opposed to step 3, which we hope to hit at the end of September if our numbers continue to stay the way they are as a state. But under step 2 guidance, special education teachers, if they're doing pull-out groups, they can only pull out from a single classroom at a time. The difference from step 2 to step 3 is that step 3, a teacher can pull students from multiple classrooms. And so we know that this level of support with special education will evolve and get better as the year goes on. But that is an area where the work continues to evolve. And we're also kind of hamstrung a little bit by hiring and the capacity to hire at this time within a really, really difficult area. So those are the big, reopening updates. I have a hiring piece. I need to. I'm not sure if I want to do that right now, David.
No, let's hold off on that.
Okay.
Do that just before we adjourn, unless there's some reason to do it sooner.
No.
Okay, just to kind of keep the information flowing. Yeah. Great. Let's see. The other question that came up, I was hoping we hear something about, and there probably is nothing more than what was publicly released, is about the fall sports, the fall sports programs. We know there are going to be some requirements, but what do we know?
So Steve and I talked a little bit about this. So the VPA has approved for a return of fall sports. What we would think about fall sports is that they're distinctly different than what they would look like. Typically, football will be 7-on-7, really no contact football. Fans will be limited from both, and some places. We talked about this at the high school meeting last week. As a parent, I would want to see my child if I were traveling to a different location to play. Some of the recommendations are to not allow fans from other teams to attend. Steve, from our last conversation, is trying to figure out where they can do that and how they can do that. But fans are limited in number to wherever the group sizes are by the state. I believe the document said no more than 150 people. The sports will not be allowed to start until the start of the academic day. So we have a little bit of time. So the academic year will start on September 8th for students, and that's the first day that sports can start officially with practices occurring. In the documents around sports, it goes so far as to really specify the types of practices and drills that can be done. So really no low ground level drills for sports like volleyball. Everyone indoors is going to be wearing a mask. Everyone outdoors in close contact may be wearing a mask, especially the only groups from what we recall correctly in competition that might not be wearing masks would be cross country because of the level of breathing necessary. The large scale jamborees won't be occurring. So if there were a multi-team round robin tournament type of a format, that won't be occurring as well. So still, it's a part of the high school experience for students. And Steve and I talked briefly about it. I don't want to necessarily speak for him, but I think we both felt like so much has been taken away from students, and so much has been there's such a sense of loss that entering into a conversation around what does this really mean if we do take it away is really what might be problematic for students. So we want to continue to honor and recognize what's there and celebrate what students can do, as opposed to creating something else and another hurdle for them that might be the topic of just something else taken away.
Great. Thanks, Andy. See, we have a couple of board members with questions. Thomas?
Yeah, hi. So I had a question before this about fall sports. I don't understand, how would students be able to stay 6 feet apart with masks on and do sports such as football?
It's non-contact from what I think it sounds more like spring football, like that 7-on-7. I have to go back and look at the exact documentation, Thomas. I thought the same thing as well, in all honesty, and wondering what this is going to look like. But this would look more like that 7-on-7 spring flag football type of league, where that close contact is defined as like being within 6 feet for 15 minutes in terms of contact tracing purposes. And so I think that they're looking at it from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think
I mean,
that's,
we're not obliged to have fall sports by any means, right? Legally, in any way.
I do not believe we are obliged to have it.
Because I don't see any way that you can safely have children during a pandemic playing football without masks, or, you know, they have to be close. They can't be 6 feet apart.
Yeah, I believe they're masked while they're playing football. I would have to go back to the guidance from the AOE on that. And I'll be honest, I didn't read that one with the laser lens that I need to.
Okay.
it's,
Well,
it's,
I mean,
it's-
it's to me, it does make. I mean, I know you're just looking into this, but football of all things, any sports where people are. I can see track and field maybe because people aren't near each other, but I mean that's just a prime breeding ground.
I think bass fishing doesn't have any prohibitions. I think they said that's kind of what they.
That's fine. I'm
It's
sure
either
golf.
bass
I'm sure
fishing
golf
team.
is fine, but
Yeah.
even flag football, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
well, and for soccer, students are often right next to each other and facing each other, trying to take possession of the ball, and the same with field hockey. So masks are going to have to be worn, and I think that's going to be it's going to be difficult because it's a little bit harder to breathe through them. So there may have to be unmasking breaks and things, but yeah, I think if it's going to go forward, we're going to have to be pretty rigorous about making sure that the students keep the masks on. But
I completely agree. And I stress that in my updates to parents too as well. You know, the importance of wearing masks in the building. You know, wearing masks is critical, and we've shared. This is a conversation that parents can have with children. If parents are kind of concerned that their child may have difficulty wearing the mask, and the remote learning option might be a good fit for that child. And so this is where we want to avoid those kind of unnecessary confrontations around wearing the mask. But we've stressed repeatedly the importance of wearing the masks while we're in the facilities, and that's for the purpose of everyone's safety.
Yep, absolutely. Some of the coaches are not all parents or regular employees of the school district, so I think that they're the ones that are going to need the clearest messaging. Timothy?
Oh, well, I think the state has said that there can't be more than 150 fans. So I imagine if there's 150 fans in the stands, there has to be social distancing, there has to be masks required and all. There has to be a whole set of protocol for people watching these events. I really don't like it at all. The idea of 150 people gathering, but my question was, what about the other extracurriculars? What about band and theater and all those?
So the high school's made the decision not to hold the musical this fall, but to see, let's wait and see where the numbers are with items. Right now, the recommendations are, things like band and because of the aspirations and the aerosolized spread of the virus, the recommendations are not to have any sort of instrumental or choral groups performing. Steve has mentioned his band director is being incredibly creative about how we can continue to educate kids and have those programs. So, he's not willing to pull the plug on that one yet. I think he's still looking at how can we still find ways to have music instruction and bring students together to perform, whether it's, in some virtual manner. So I think there's more to come on that. The guidance is pretty clear about there's no marching band type groups together, that close contact, again, the way that the virus is spread, but there's work still going on around what, if we can do anything. I think that they're going to try to figure it out at the high school.
The music teachers across the state had a remarkable distance learning course over the summer that I think pretty much everybody in our district took, and they're all really well prepared to deliver meaningful music instruction remotely. But singing and wind instruments are going to be difficult.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll have more information in 2 weeks, and it'll still be before we open, so we can talk about this. I think Tim's point about people, fans, as well as the athletes really being conscientious about wearing masks is really crucial. I think if they want, we don't want to keep taking things away from kids, but if they can't participate in a safe way, and then they'll ruin it for themselves, basically. And I think that message probably, being responsible and part of caring for each other, the message that we're trying to carry to the whole community, I think it needs to go especially to the after-school activities. It's easy to think that it's different. It's not in school. It's not as important, and wreck it for everyone. Okay.
That's an excellent point, David.
Liz.
So we're going to come back and revisit this, right?
Yes.
This is not set in stone. Kids shouldn't be told right now that they're going to be starting practice the day that school starts.
They can certainly plan for it, Liz. I mean, we don't know if it's going to happen. We don't know anything is going to happen or when it's going to happen, but they can certainly prepare for it.
I also wanted to say something about the Vermont Department of Health's website.
Liz, I wonder, could we? I'm really trying to keep us on a tight agenda here and stay with the.
I understand.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I understand that it is not reflecting the current positive COVID cases in Brattleboro and Putney. I have been waiting for days for those numbers, and they're not there. So I just want people to be really aware it's around. Wear your mask. Be careful. Tell your kids to be careful.
Yep. On Monday we had two new cases in Windham County. Yep, thanks. Other board members, any other comments from the board? Okay, I just want to remind the public that we'll be taking public questions and comments during the public comment non-agenda items later in the meeting, except if we're taking an action, and in that case, the public always gets to participate. So we're just taking board comments at this point. Any other questions for Andy? Okay, I wonder, I see the, Frank is going to, under new business, we've got a ventilation report. So it's a little odd. Now would be a good time to have that, but we can wait and take it in order. The only other question, oh no, we're done. Unless Andy, you have anything else to say?
No, I just have, we can take up the hiring piece, and I have something from Steve. We can do that up in new business.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. Don't forget.
Yeah, I've got a
I will. I will forget.
Yep.
Liz.
David, I have one question.
Yep.
Andy, is Putney Central School the only school that's in a predicament in terms of student numbers and staffing? We're a single strand school. No, I think there are other schools.
So the challenge comes with the smaller schools and having the range of remote students. That there are kind of interesting clusters of things that put unique pressures on situations. And so like a cluster of, let's say, 28 students, for instance, is a difficult number because that's 2 medium-sized classes, as opposed to, if you have 28 students going remote, you may as well have 40 students going remote, for instance, because you're going to get the same, you're going to need the same 2 adults in those spaces. So that's where some of the challenges were coming from, the need to coordinate between the buildings. There's some unique certification pieces as well. So when we look at matching up reasonable groups, most effective delivery of instruction, and teacher certification, that was where the part of the partnering and grouping of schools came from.
No, I mean for the hybrid method, we're a single strand school, but we have over 200 kids there. And I didn't know if any other of the other elementary schools were having the particular problems that poor Herb has been dealing with.
I will say every school has engaged in a significant amount of problem solving around how to make things work at their environment. And with 7 elementaries, there are 7 different scenarios at each building that have been incredibly unique, challenging, and have required so many brainstorming sessions among the team. It's been it's been amazing to watch, and it's been amazing to watch the team evolve and grow and do so much phenomenal teamwork together. But every school has had its own unique scenario for things, and there's been no one size fits all, I guess.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Financial stability. Frank, I think Andy just mentioned that we had some CARES funds that we were able to use. So it sounds like maybe we're getting some of that reimbursement. Have we seen any numbers, or do we know what's coming our way?
Yeah, so I sent you something earlier, David. You may not have seen it. It was probably around 4 or 5 o'clock. Oh, yeah, something like that.
Sorry, I didn't get to see it. Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, I do have it's a one-page overview of the year-to-date spending so far. We'll have Barb put it on the website so folks can see it. It will be updated almost daily. At this point, we're pursuing 3 categories of this CARES relief funding. The first category, the largest one that we're most interested in, is the one that actually reimburses us for those costs that are not budgeted. At this point, that's about $500,000 year to date. A second category of funding is assigned to the ventilation improvement projects. And at this point, we've obligated about $72,000 for that work, and I do expect there to be quite a bit more of an investment in that category. The third category is something we've talked about earlier. It's this Elementary Secondary Emergency Relief Act, and that's the one that has the funny strings attached, where if we apply for that money, the state essentially takes it back away from us in our general state aid. I understand they're refining those rules, and there will be a subset of that funding that we can request for unbudgeted expenditures. So, in total, we can identify about $1 million worth of COVID-related expenses. The agency is still working on their process for us to actually start seeing the cash flow return to us. I understand they're working closely with the governor's office, the Agency of Administration, and at this point, we actually don't have an application process for, as they say, actually getting the cash flow to return to us. But we've been in several meetings, and we certainly understand that it's imminent. So I can keep you posted on that.
Great. And you mentioned a report on our spending to date. Does that include the FY20 spending too?
The report I provided you, David, was just for the agenda item, the the COVID overview. But related to the broader picture, we are submitting the fiscal year-end results to the Agency of Ed as part of the annual data collection this week. And I can provide, I was planning on reviewing a financial statement with the Finance Committee at that meeting Sean mentioned. In general, I can say that we're going to end up the year in a favorable position against the budget. And so I can provide the specifics of that at that next meeting.
Oh, well, that's good news. And it's also good news that you were able, I'm pretty sure you had something to do, you and your colleagues had something to do with the state relenting a little bit on taking that emergency relief and just swapping it for the state aid. So I really appreciate that. Actually, my question was about the COVID costs from FY20, the spring costs. Are they in that 500,000 reimbursement that's included as well as what we're spending now? Great.
It is. Yeah. Spring costs were about 118,000 of that 555.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Well, let me see if there are any questions from the board, and if not, we could go right into the ventilation upgrade if you wanted, and I can shift the PreK partnerships, and we're not going to do Leadership Council unfinished business because that's rescheduled for October. So any questions from the board about the COVID reimbursement and the information that Frank shared? Okay, we'll let Frank just continue right along with that, and then the boiler as well, I guess. Might as well just do it all.
Sure. So with the ventilation project update, that has been a significant amount of work that we've started back in I reported to the board about planned improvements back in January, February. Fortunately, as soon as the pandemic hit, we went into overdrive on control system upgrades. We've been working closely with Efficiency Vermont throughout the process. And actually, Alex Rowe from Efficiency Vermont has joined our meeting in the event that you have some maybe more technical questions that I can't answer. But in a real sort of summary level status report, the legislature approved $6.5 million for specifically indoor air quality improvements for public schools in Vermont. Fortunately, they have enlisted Efficiency Vermont as their grant administrator. And we, as I said, have had a relationship over a number of years with Efficiency Vermont and their technical folks who are absolutely outstanding. They've given us some excellent guidance. I'll boil it down into just 5 quick points. The recommendations for what schools ought to be doing, and we are absolutely, fully implementing these recommendations. It's initially to assess, obviously, the existing ventilation systems and the filtration systems, so that we understand, what is functioning according to its capacity and what's not, what needs to be, repaired and or controlled differently. The second category, or in terms of strategy, is to engage the digital control contractors that work with our facility managers, and they can create these modes that the facility managers can choose, essentially like a pandemic mode that substantially increases the ventilation in the building. So that work is much of the work was done earlier in the month, but it's also going on right now as we speak as well. Obviously, once there's an assessment, this is the third component, once there's an assessment of capacity and what's functioning, we've got to engage the mechanical contractors to actually fix things. We have done some of that work, but actually just this week we've committed to a significant amount of more work, but it's going to be informed by this assessment and these balancing reviews, the testing and balancing reviews. Another fourth sort of strategy is obviously check our monitoring systems and making sure that where our controls say something is working, we actually verify that unit ventilators are reading the proper sensors and they're actually opening and closing the damper doors, and that filters are obviously in place and working as they are intended. And then the last category is to create those isolation zones for the nursing spaces and the isolation rooms. So we have gone through all the buildings and assessed where current infrastructure is sufficient, and maybe it's just an air purifier that gets added, or where infrastructure does need to be improved so that we create those negative pressure conditions in those spaces. So that's a kind of a quick overview of the ventilation work, and I got to acknowledge the terrific work of Robert Clerk at the high school, who's helped coordinate among all of our 9 buildings with our other facility managers. Folks are really extending themselves and doing a great job working together and getting us ready for opening school. So, and I would say one last thing, and that is that Efficiency Vermont and Alex Rowe's sort of assistance in coordinating a variety of different vendors, the disciplines, you know, the electrical engineers, the mechanical engineers, the school staff, and then the ASHRAE standards that say this is, you know, this is what's a healthy learning environment, has just been instrumental in, you know, helping us move through this process.
Thank you. Any questions from the board specific to ventilation? Not seeing. You answered my primary question, which is, are we using the ASHRAE standard? And the next one is there any? That's, you know, that makes me feel better because it's a higher standard than just, oh, we're basically okay. It's and you talked about the pandemic mode, so obviously there's a, you know, an ability to increase. Is there any sort of a anecdotal or kind of folky way that can be described? I heard somebody, I heard a program that talked about that and about the air purifiers, and that properly sized $300 machine can in a classroom can change the air every 20 minutes. And that's the kind of thing that, you know, that's kind of reassuring. If, you know, if you're going to be in that setting, is that kind of where we're headed? Is that the? Well,
Yes, particularly in the rooms where they don't have outside air as a source. So unfortunately, you know, a number of like an interior office or could be a nurse space, you know, does not have an outside air source. So that's an important measure, you know, of safety. But the ASHRAE standards do, you know, rely on an outside air source, and that's the predominant condition in our classrooms. You know, most of our classrooms have those unit ventilators and they have an outside window. Right. So recirculating interior air is not ideal, right? And so much of the work that we're doing now is enabling our facility managers to open up the damper doors in those unit ventilators so more outside air can be changed, like you're saying, David, a cycle per hour of air changes. And that's what we're in the middle of verifying. We look at the ASHRAE standard, and that's our target. You know, fortunately, the legislature and the Efficiency Vermont and others that are part of the grant administration are saying, you're going to do, you know, you're charged with doing the best you can, but it's recognizing, you know, we can't rebuild the infrastructure of an entire ventilation system, you know, in 3 weeks. So, you know, I know, I'm very confident that there's probably 400 classrooms throughout our 9 buildings, and I'm confident that we're going to get through an assessment of those, and we will have an understanding of the conditions.
Great, thank you. Again, any board questions for Frank? I think we've gotten more specific. Well, it's not surprising that since we've actually been getting more information and doing so much work, we're getting more specificity now as we get closer to opening, and I think that's probably reassuring for a lot of people. It's been really difficult, and now we're sort of really getting to the meat of the steps that are being, all the precautions that are being taken. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, you want to tell us about the boiler?
Okay, yes, this is something that is on the longer term capital plan, Dummerston boiler system, and it is scheduled, I believe it was 2023. Just like most of our buildings since I've been here, any sort of a maintenance project has moved toward a biofuel wood energy solution. So as most of you know, we've accomplished that at Academy School, at Green Street, at Guilford, at Putney. And at this point in Dummerston, we were planning on pursuing that improvement, a biofuel heating plant. However, I've been informed through primarily now Robert Clerk, having gotten much closer to many of our buildings, that the current heating plant in Dummerston is unlikely to carry the heating load for this coming season. So we have somewhat of an emergency requirement to be sure that we can heat the building. Fortunately, a backup boiler, which is always part of the solution, is a relatively inexpensive interim step. So in all of these projects that we've done with the wood systems, we generally have a small oil backup, and the idea there is to have a different fuel source. So if something happens with your primary fuel source, you always have the ability to rely on a way to continue to operate school. I have received a quote. It's about $40,000 to remove the existing boiler for the Dummerston School and bring in a backup boiler that will carry the full load for this interim period. We would want to obviously move forward with the full project, the biofuel project, but it's unrealistic to get that done prior to this heating season. I have confirmed with the contractor, it's BG Mechanical that's provided us the analysis and the quote, who we have worked with before. We know this is a very reputable firm. They say that as long as we can move forward immediately, which I told them I would be in touch with them tomorrow, pending this discussion with the board, they can still have a boiler installed for a November heating cycle. So it's unfortunate that this has come up sort of well in advance of the planned cycle, but you know, I'm confident that we can be in a position to operate school, and I don't think Julianne Egan is with us, but
she just came in.
Okay. Yep. You know, if you needed any more background on sort of the compromises that they've been dealing with at Dummerston because of somewhat irregularity in that, you know, the system performance, you know, she can provide you a little more detail. But Robert Clerk has done a great deal of these sorts of assessments and projects, and I trust his judgment on that. And the BG Mechanical folks have verified that, yeah, it's very unlikely that we would have a successful season with what's there.
And you'll continue at the same time. You continue looking into getting the engineering and the studies for a pellet or for a biofuel system, and that'll get into it'll get moved up, obviously, chronologically, and that'll be done later on. So that's going to go on simultaneously.
Yeah,
Great.
we would want to definitely amend the capital plan so that biofuel source starts the planning process with a bid process as early as this January, February.
Right, and we're in good shape in terms of our capital reserve. So there are some questions which I'll take. I just wanted to make it clear. So we'll be looking for a motion to use the capital reserve to do this immediate work and the engineering to continue.
Yes.
Okay, so I will work on drafting a motion, so Wendy will know what to write down, and Sean, our contractor on board, has a comment or question.
Oh, Actually, I was just going to make a motion.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and I'll write it down.
All right. So I would make a motion that the WSESD board authorize Frank Rucker to proceed with a backup boiler for the school of Dummerston in order to facilitate the heating requirements for the coming school year.
Okay, and do you want to add, with the backup boiler and preparations for permanent replacement?
I'm not sure that needs to be done because it sounds like it's definitely in the works.
Well, do you need that, Frank? Or you
If
just
it
need...
would save a step going down the road, that I would certainly add that.
Do we need that, Frank? You think?
I would say it's up to the board. You know, it's definitely you know, essential part of the system. So I would pursue it, and I would not anticipate the board would have any objection. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good addition then, David. To, in addition to the temporary, the backup boiler, there would be a pursuit of a biofuel system to heat the school in Dummerston at a future date.
Okay. So I guess develop a proposal for a biofuel system.
Yeah.
Okay. So any questions from the board? Thomas?
Yeah, I must have misunderstood it. I thought that the boiler in Dummerston already was biofuel.
No, unfortunately, both
It's
there
oil?
is a backup. There's a backup oil boiler that's defunct, and the primary boiler is oil as well.
Oh, I could have. That's what I didn't understand. I thought that you were saying a backup oil one for the wood pellet burner, but okay. Or is that separate from the heating? I'm sorry, I don't know the facilities, like what's used for what, but I thought wood pellets were used in Dummerston. Is that just for heat? No?
No
Okay.
wood pellets in Dummerston.
I was wrong. Okay, good to know.
We're going to fix that.
Yeah.
Ann?
Did you want a second on Sean's motion?
Oh, there's a good idea. I never quite got to reading it straight through. Yeah, so it's been moved and seconded, moved by Sean and seconded by Ann. And I'll read it back after we've had the comments. Sean, just something else?
Yes, I would like to. As a member of the Finance Committee, one of the things we always do is go through all the warrants. And it's been very noticeable that Dummerston has the largest consumption because of the system that is presently there of a fossil fuel in order to heat. So I know Frank has made everybody aware on the Finance Committee that that is something that is in the works to be changed at a time so that it would be removed from the fossil fuel consumption that it is today.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the board? I don't see any. So we have a motion to authorize Frank Rucker to proceed with the installation of a backup boiler for Dummerston Central School, is it? Dummerston School, sorry, for Dummerston School, and to develop a proposal for a biofuel system. Is there any further comment, any questions? Seeing none. We have 2 voters at Jackie's house. So would all those in favor of the motion to install a backup boiler in Dummerston, please?
We haven't seconded it.
Yeah, and did.
And did.
Angel. She stuck it in. It's okay. So all those in favor indicate by saying aye, please.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is passed. Thank you, Frank and Sean and Ann. That's way better than I was thinking we were going to have to deal with. So now we have the pre-K partnerships agreement we need action on. I know I have to go in and sign it. I believe, Andy, do you have details on that, or is it just a pro forma? We
believe Paul can speak to the details of it, but there are a number of schools that we would have to approve the pre-K partnerships with. It's Brattleboro Center for Education, the Early Education Services, the Garland School, the Grammar School, Hilltop Montessori, Horizon Early Learning Program, Miss Martha's Creative Learning Program, Mount Snow Childcare, Mulberry Bush Independent School, Neighborhood Schoolhouse, Owl's Nest Family Preschool and Childcare, Saxton's River Montessori School, Susie's Little Peanuts, Timpson Hill Preschool, Vernon Preschool, Westby Nursery School, and the Winston L. Prouty Center for Child Development. I'm not sure, Paul, if you want to add anything to the information.
Sure. This is just the annual contract with our local independent pre-K providers for 10 hours of publicly funded pre-K education. We've been running these contracts for a number of years now. It's a great arrangement.
Yeah, and for the for board members of not previously the Brattleboro Town Board, this is something that we do every year. Before we have a motion to approve the partnership agreements as presented, there was recently some information from the state about additional funding for preschool. I assume that will go through us as well, but we won't have any administrative responsibility. Will we have administrative responsibility for that? Or do you know what I'm talking about? There were a couple of articles in the media about additional funding coming from the state for preschool. Significant number of millions of dollars that
I think that was for childcare, not preschool.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, well, since nobody knows anything, we won't. I'll move my question away. So, could I have a motion, please, to approve our pre-K partnership agreements as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Ann. And second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Ann Beekman, seconded by Liz Adams to approve our pre-K partnership agreements as presented. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and we have approved our partnership agreements. Now, the next item is from the WSESD and WSESU Diversity, Equity, and Social Justice Committee. We have a report from the committee. It was presented to the board. You all had a chance to see it. I hope you had a chance to read through it. As with the other reports we've had, we're not going to be able to take a lot of actions on this. There may be one or two things that we want to approve or move to put in motion, but we'll get into this in much more depth in October on an October agenda. But for now, I'd like to ask someone from the committee to kind of go over the report, give us a presentation, and any thoughts on what you'd like from would like the board to do, or any actions, or basically educate us a little bit about this proposal, please.
I guess I'll start and I'll let other people from the committee chime in after that, if that's all right.
Thanks, Michaela. Let me know if you want me to put it up, and I'm happy to put it up, but I would rather see you while you're talking.
So I feel like one of the important things is that we as a committee came together, and this has been, and unfortunately we didn't get to finish the year, but this has been a really strong year because this is the first year that we had our teacher leaders in place, and that's been really important. And I think that their schools have already noticed a difference by having someone in the building to take up equity and social justice issues on the ground in each school. Also, I can say that we're in an unprecedented time, which you all know very well, and that administrators are really have the axe to the grindstone in terms of figuring out what to do in schools and how to do it. And so there's been a lot of focus on how to do it. How do we do this thing? And a lot of people have been showing up at a lot of meetings. And really trying to get the idea of equity heard, and it just hasn't been coming through. So that's how this document came about, is that how do we center equity in reopening? What are the ways that we can center our most vulnerable children? And that's what we mean by equity, is like centering our most vulnerable children and most marginalized makes it better for all of the people involved. And so how do we do that? And so we got people together, our committee and other people who deal with marginalized populations in schools, to really talk about that. And out of that discussion came this document. And it doesn't touch on everything, but it touches on a lot of important ideas that connect not only just vulnerable students, but also the educators, that how we need to be connected and humanize the school experience for the kids and keeping safety in mind. And so one of them is having teachers on teams and connected to each other, which will really support if in case someone gets sick or someone has a family member that gets sick, and in different levels, having them be interdisciplinary teams depending on the level, and including support staff like me. The other thing, I'm hearing an echo, that's important is really not putting our most vulnerable staff in positions to be with kids that are unmasked. So like making sure it's not just the paraeducators in rooms with kids when they're eating lunch, when they have their masks off, like whose job does that fall under? And so really thinking through all the pieces that put both the kids and ourselves at risk. And I'm not going to go through it point by point, but I'm going to hand it off and let a couple more people from the committee speak about what they see as impacting their students directly. And then if that's okay, and then we'll go from there.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I just ask people to raise their little blue hands so I can recognize you.
Yeah, Anna, I don't know if you want to go.
Sure. Sorry, I didn't have time to put my hand up, but
Okay.
I'm Anna. I'm a school counselor at Academy School. So I've definitely been looking at this document and the conversation through like an elementary focus. So I just want to say that that's where my knowledge lies. And I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is that we have a pretty diverse group of students and diverse needs across the district within each of our different elementary schools. And I know that our teachers and our administrators have been doing kind of like impossible work in a crazy time. So I just want to acknowledge that they're doing a lot of the things that we mention in the document. But one of the things that I think needs to be focused on is just making sure that the access to things that we're looking at are being addressed across each school. So I know that there's a lot of like project-based learning that's been coming up, outdoor learning. So just reinforcing that whether students are hybrid or remote, that they have access across the board to that type of learning. And also just from a mental health perspective, because that is the role that I play, we did include that we would like to see added access to social service supports, including a social worker in each building. The need for this has really been highlighted by COVID and also increased since COVID happened. And both of these things really demand that we have robust access to internet for all of our kids, which I know is something that everyone is thinking about. But it makes a huge difference in the ability for people to connect with social services, and also for adults in the families that we work with to build relationships with their counselors and teachers in like a safe and affirming way, that they're not feeling like they have to go into the building if it feels unsafe, for example. So I won't go on and on more. I'll let other people speak because I know we're short on time, but those were two of the things that stood out for me from that document. Thanks.
Thanks, Anna. Just to be clear, I was pushing everything else so that we'd have plenty of time and we wouldn't be doing this at 10 o'clock at night. So we have plenty of time for this. Thank you. Corey Sorensen?
Yes, I'm here, sorry. Yeah, so I just wanted to speak up in support of the document and to advocate for staff and faculty. I've been doing some hours of work at the Vermont Welcome Center there in Guilford, and there are safety precautions in place while I've been working there. And the reality of those safety precautions it's not happening as it said it would. Like, for example, there's rows going one way into the bathroom and people are coming in and confused and turned around. And I think that a similar thing might be happening in our schools. So when Michaela was talking about staff that are working directly with students during lunch times or whatever, I think we just really need to be looking at who are those staff that are in the most vulnerable positions and consider offering hazard pay to that staff, and including staff that would be maybe participating in remote learning and having roles that teachers are also doing. So, you know, and the other thing is I think that there's it seems like there's a lot of unanswered questions still. And I know this has come up a lot, but I think the part of the document that I think is important is to consider looking at the September 8th start date and working more closely with staff to come up with a safer plan for reopening schools. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Corey. Henry Sakini?
Yeah, hi, thanks. I want to speak in support of this too. I'm a teacher at BOHS in the high school, and I was at the meeting. I didn't help put the document together, but I was in the meeting where the Diversity and Equity Committee met to discuss the plan for the document. And one thing that stands out for me that's maybe different a little bit than the other work people have been putting in is putting students from marginalized groups at the center of what we're doing on the reboot. And I still don't feel, without this document in place, like that's been fully addressed. My experience in the spring when COVID first hit was that the students in my classes who were most at risk were able to participate by and large the least in remote learning. And so I have concerns that we have not done enough in terms of making sure that that's the center of our focus. We should worry about all students, of course, but the students that are most marginalized and most at risk don't seem to certainly got short shrift in the spring. And I don't know, I can't really tell from the high school point of view beyond this document what's been implemented. So I've strongly encouraged the board to take this document under advice and put it forward as something that they support. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Janaki, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Can you unmute, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Janaki.
Janaki, thank you.
That's all right. Several of you, including you, actually, know me from the deep, dark past, if you like.
Yes.
Paul, yes. So, so I was the first diversity coordinator at the time when Superintendent McNulty was there and Bertie Sprague. And the reason was there were hakenkreuzes on the trees, and there was a black doll burnt at the homecoming fire. So those particular instances really created a position where they asked me if I would, and the Equity Committee at that time, if I could try to do something, given that I had had some experiences in other parts of the world as well as here. And I've also been a teacher at BAMS under Julie and have taught in the high school. So I am part of your community. I hope you all accept that. And I do teacher training at the moment, as you know. So my thinking about this is that this is a really important document that we really should support, partly because it comes in the tradition of what we tried to do for the past 20-some years. And if you look at the past extempore magazines, you will see a lot of this information. That is, we've looked at the vulnerability of children of every race, but we've also looked at the relationships amongst the students and amongst the humans in these buildings of ours. That is really embedded in diversity work. There is poverty, and the poor children and the children who are Black and brown and every other color have to be able to relate to each other with compassion and with a critical intellect, which means that the teachers have to be ahead of the game. And so in this case, it's not enough for us to be simply good managers of buildings. That's very important and very difficult, but that's not sufficient. What we really have to do is to find ways in which we can improve and deepen our teaching and our curriculum, without which this document will not stand. We've done some of that, but not enough. And there have been superintendents in the past, and now Superintendent Andy, welcome. We hope that we can continue this work, even if I'm not inside the school right now, in a critical kind of way. There is a huge amount and large experience within us, and we have the wit, I pause, the wit, and the experience to be able to teach each other how to behave with each other as humans, and teach our children the same thing. I would say that the diversity, when I used the word diversity many, many years ago, I was a little bit uneasy. Should I call myself convener? Should I call myself mentor? Should I call myself teacher, which is what I had, Teacher Janaki? Or what should I call myself? And I said, all right, you know, am I a coach? Am I a mentor? What? No, it's none of those things. It's much, and in terms of relationships, somebody, and you've got a very good person there in Michaela, should be a director with assistance in penetrating the questions that have come up. Whether it's bus safety, hallway safety, school safety, and how we deal with the language of our children. I used to teach a class where I asked them, what do we call each other in the worst kind of ways? The board would fill up in a few minutes. So I said, go and ask your parents if they use these same words. Yes, ask your grandparents. So this is a generational thing, that some of the words, the worst words our children can use, are learned. And that is also the recollection of teachers. So we have the capacity to have conversations without outside trainers. We don't need trainers. We have ourselves. And we have the commitment to the children. Each child is bright. And given that kind of situation, one of the suggestions has been the teams and the sort of pods, if you like, as groups. And I learned that was a very good thing. And Auntie Pichuli, when I was working for him, and Keith will know this, and they still do an excellent job with teams and teams teaching. So integrated studies, team teaching. All of this is curricular and managerial. It's pedagogical and human. So I would strongly suggest that we not underestimate ourselves and not underestimate each other, and set an example of a true education where equity has some real meaning. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Janaki. Liana.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes.
I am not on the committee. I wish the equity document was shared with me, and I just wanted to speak up in support of it. I'm a social worker at the high school, and I work with a particular student body that has high levels of social, emotional, and behavioral supports for needs. And this past spring, we just saw so directly and clearly the impacts of the online delivery of education on our particular student population, specifically in like the loss of relationships and consistency that are needed to establish the emotional safety that it's needed for learning. I was really heartened to see this document, and thank you so much to Michaela and the team for putting it together, because it so clearly lays out that given these huge circumstances that none of us can control, that if we start by centering the needs of the students who are most impacted in various ways, that's the way that we will be able to build in success, and that success will flow out towards other students as well. So I just wanted to speak up briefly in support of this document and this lens, and thank you to the committee for putting it together.
Thank you. Mike Zasek.
Yes, I'm on the committee, the Diversity and Equity Committee, and just 2 points I'd like to make. One is that we're not talking about a small segment of our population when we talk about what's behind this document. I would estimate at least 40% of our kids fall in this category of marginalized kids who are impacted more than other kids about what's going on. So it's a large number of kids. It's not a small number, and I think that's important to note. It's probably higher, well, in fact, I know it's higher in some schools than 40%. Secondly, that the key word here is equity. And you could go through this document and say, well, we're already doing a lot of this, or we have plans to do a lot of this. And that's all true, but those plans, if you look at it from an equity point of view, it's different. The actions you'd actually take would be different. And that's where this equity lens, looking at it from an equity point of view, would bring different actions on many of the things we are addressing in one way. And that's what we're asking to be done, is to look at it from an equity point of view. That's it.
Thank you, Mike. Krista.
There you go. I just wanted to unmute. Thank you so much. I just wanted to speak up in support of this document. And specifically, for me, my greatest concern is for our special education students and families. Again, equity for this population means equitable access for learning. And that is layered and complicated for us who are parents of children with disabilities. I look forward to this document and this effort to increase opportunities for better communication and better involvement, better voice for the families of children with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary's iPhone is all I have to work with. Mary, you'll need to unmute.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't sure which Mary. Is it, are you asking for Mary Gannon, David?
I can't tell because it says Mary's iPhone. So if that's you.
Yeah, that would be me. Apologies for that.
Great. Thanks,
yeah, apologies. Mary. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Just quickly, I think Janaki spoke on behalf of myself and others. I want to put 150% behind this proposal. And what I think is important to recognize, as I've been listening in over the course of this summer and all of the really important work that the community and staff and faculty, Michaela's office, the board, and those of us who are committed to social justice have been doing, with the last bit of work that was voted in, the last proposal. This is a natural fit for that. So I think, you know, again, to keep pushing forward this idea of how we look at everything that we're doing through an equity.
Mary, I think we've lost you briefly. Oh. Yeah, we've lost Mary. Oh gosh. Well, hopefully she will figure that out and re-enter. Ruby?
Sorry, it took me a while to get that. Ruby McAdoo, Putney Central School. I appreciate seeing this document, and I also was a little bit, I just want to understand as a community member who works with a mutual aid organization in Putney, we're actively thinking about how to serve certain needs in our community related to childcare. And we're trying to partner with people, with organizations, and I feel like we've gotten a pretty clear indication from the school, both I feel like from her, and I feel like I've heard this from Andy, that use of buildings for childcare would not work, and the mixing of pods, because an aftercare situation would mix pods, would not work. And I'm seeing conflict between what I've heard from the district and what's being proposed here. And so, and I'm raising that, and I understand there's lots of conflict going on and lots of things being worked out, but ultimately the childcare piece is so fundamentally important and has to happen at like breakneck speed in order to get it in place, in order to affect people who need it at the beginning of the school year. And so I just wanted to understand, I guess I don't understand what the action is that the board is going to be taking and how quickly that would work, and how this would reach the advocacy organizations and people who would be collaborating to help make the childcare piece happen. And I also, by the way, I think there was one of Tara Castine has had her hand up for a while. She let me know that I don't think that you may not be seeing her, but she's been waiting for a while as well.
No, actually, it's been up for the whole meeting, but this is the first time we're taking public participation. So, there's no way for me to know that she wanted to. But if you're done, Ruby, Tara can go right now. Yeah, Tara, go ahead.
Thanks, I'm unmuted now. I didn't have something particular to say in regards to this, but I guess it is kind of dealing with equity. When I hear discussions about sports being a possibility, but other activities not being thought of for our students, the equity part of that is a hard one for me, because I was a theater kid and I did theater. And so when I hear that you're thinking about making sure that students can play sports with masks on, but not contemplating having those other students sing or do drama or after activity classes with a mask on, I get kind of upset that it's not being viewed as under the same lens. We're saying that kids will miss it and kids need those interactions, but they also need the other activities that they're part of, like chess club and theater and music and band. And I know band is a really hard one because you're playing instruments, but I really do hope that you, when you're thinking about that, you are thinking about the all students that would want to participate in an activity, not just sports-driven activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the Diversity, Equity, and Social Justice Committee or staff or community members that any comments or questions about this? Okay, board members, I see Sean and Tim. So Sean, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I read through this document quite carefully and reviewed it a couple of times. And actually, I received an email from a resident of the town of Guilford who was concerned about what one sentence in the document. And so that sentence was, the end of the sentence reads, will likely generate the currently planned September 8th start date. And then it says further, the next sentence, missing the September 8th date may be necessary in everyone's best interest. And the individuals that got a hold of me were a little bit alarmed by the prospect that the start date for the school year would be changed because of this document. And so I was wondering, was that really the intent of the committee to change or propose the change after all the work has been done by all the administrators and the central office to try to bring the start of school on September 8th, which a tremendous number of parents are counting on, planning on, and thinking about, in addition to all the students. So I was wondering, is that really, since it is the last two sentences of the document, is that the intent of the document? And if so, I really don't think it's appropriate.
I don't, I guess I can speak to that. You can't see me probably anymore because I'm sitting in the dark.
Right.
But I'm here on my porch. I see Kate is in the dark too.
When you come real close, your screen lights you up. Yeah, there you go.
I would say that isn't the intent, but we thought that it might be an outcome. Does that make sense? And so,
yeah.
So if you're thinking about putting teachers in pods, if you're talking about project-based learning, those things don't happen overnight. If you're talking about interdisciplinary projects, which have not been a focus K-12, they have been a focus in certain areas of the school district for sure. But that's really a new way of thinking. And so that would take time. That's one thought. The other thought was that one of the things was really getting a plan for each family, like looking at families as a unit and meeting with families. And so the idea was that would take time. And so that is where that came from, is that if we had a plan for each family, and I am not negating the work that's been done to start school. And I don't think that was the intent of any of the people on the committee. I think that the challenge is that our most vulnerable families are really the ones that are hard to get in touch with. And those are the ones that we definitely need to get in touch with. And it might take more time to meet them where they're at, which might be meeting them in a parking lot somewhere or going to their home and standing outside to really get a better understanding of what their students need. So it was not an intent, but as the more we talked, like during the conversation, we were like, how can we do this how can this happen in 2 weeks? And it didn't seem likely. So the idea was that could be a result, not an intention and not a design at all, but that could be, but really thinking about meeting families' needs, that might be something that would happen. So that's why it was there.
Thanks, Michaela. Tim?
Yeah, Sean just nailed the same thoughts I had when I read the document. When I came across missing September 8th date may be necessary in everyone's best interest. That's a line that really concerned me. I'm so supportive of the entire document. I'll mention that in my free time, I've been doing this census work. So I travel all around Brattleboro, and I've done this for years on other census surveys. And what always strikes me when I roam around Southern Vermont are the tremendous number of pockets of poverty that there are. And this time I'm meeting families who we bring up school, and they mention how there's nothing they can do. Their 8, 9, 10-year-olds will be latchkey kids, and they're in pretty desperate situations. What Mike said about vulnerable students being 40% of our student body, that does not surprise me at all. There's a lot of poverty and vulnerability in our town. So when I read the missing September 8th date may be necessary, well, it struck me as, would that really be in these folks' best interest? I understand Michaela brings up very good points about it's going to take time, but I would personally advocate for, yeah, it's going to take time, but do it concurrently with the opening of the reopening of the school beginning on September 8th. The other point I just want to mention, I'll throw it out. I've been reading White Fragility, and it just reminds me that the work of diversity, it's not something we're doing for minority groups, but it's something that's just essential for everyone to get. It's whatever our race is. Our country has suffered long enough because it's been deemed as a Black problem or an Indian problem or a minority problem. The problem is all of ours, and we live in a very white dominant culture, and everybody has to work to address the issues that we're suffering from. That's all.
Thank you, Tim. Mary Gannon is back, so I welcome you and I invite you to finish your comments. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you. Sorry, everyone, I have a bad connection. Thank you. I think that was Tim who just made those comments about sort of your reflections as somebody with privilege reading White Fragility, and, you know, again, trying to expand our frame of reference around this. I guess, you know, I'm slightly offended for the folks who put this together, that anyone would think that the idea of maybe having to push the date out for opening school came with any kind of ill intention. So I just want to say that actually annoys me. So I'm just, I would imagine that knowing that many of the folks who are on that committee who have children, who are trying to make very difficult decisions about whether to send their children, how they're going to navigate it, particularly if they're single parents, is something those folks do not take lightly. So I want to just say that should not be the front. That should not be at the front of the concern about this proposal. And the other thing I just want to say is, and I'm just going to be frank with folks, what I want to say is, given what we see nationally with the trends of what is happening with schools reopening, we are being lulled to sleep if we believe that our district and over in Cheshire County where I live, that we are not going to be impacted again in the fall. And so this proposal,
I'm afraid Mary's connection failed again. Next is Andy.
Thanks, Dave. I wanted to touch base with Tim's point, you know, and I want, or Sean's point rather, and Tim's point. You know, so, you know, we met, Paul Smith, Deb Cardane, and I met with Mike this afternoon, and Michaela was able to join us afterwards. I'm not exactly sure of the entire members of the diversity committee. But one of the challenges we have in education is the siloing of things and where work takes place. And this work is absolutely so critical. And it's so essential to ensuring that we are meeting the needs of our most vulnerable learners. But it also plays off a balance when we have to make sure that that when we're working together, we're not siloing things, because in this case, I'll say I was surprised to see the recommendations from the committees are outstanding. I think they're excellent work and they're all feasible things. But we want to make sure that when we're doing work, let's look at things from an action-oriented standpoint. And while we can talk about the work being done around project-based learning is occurring, this work has been embedded in much of the reopening documents we've shared with teachers. We know it's a long way to go. And much of this will be borne out in some of the anti-racism platform as well, that we're going to look at. What does a 5-year curriculum cycle look like to get to more proficiency-based pathways for students to demonstrate their understandings? Those are the critical components. But I want to make sure, from a board standpoint, just for your weighing, we've not really empowered or enabled any level of committees, whereas our action groups are kind of empowered to help make decisions around things. Like, this is a group that's continued to meet. We want to make sure that we have kind of a broad representation on this, but also to keep us in the loop. Because while this work's being developed, a lot of while the work from this committee's met and come forward and certainly put forth some outstanding recommendations, the school-based teams have done many of the same things, and you would see that in many of the documents around the work that's being put together for the start of the school year. Certainly we have miles to go, but this is a journey, and it's a journey that we all want to start, and we're all working on starting it. With the start of the school date, many of the team will know that we wrestled mightily with even the change to the 8th, and it was something that we really felt strongly about. It was difficult for parents, because we know that parents are counting upon the schools. The transition to offering remote sections for vulnerable students was something we struggled with as a central office team, because of the implications for families and the impact upon childcare, and where can we support our most vulnerable families. They're difficult questions to answer, and there are things that we're willing to go down. I just I want to make clear that our team is in support of the document and in support of the items, but we want to make sure that we're all working together as a team and breaking down some of these silos that are kind of manifesting themselves in this conversation with what's taking place, because much of this work is being undertaken right now, or it can be put into play in the coming months or coming years.
Thanks, Andy. There are 4 more people that have asked to talk. We're getting near 8:30. I would like to ask people, I would like to quote my predecessor when I consulted with her for some advice about how to chair these meetings best. And she suggested that I encourage people to be concise, say what you need to say quickly. And to tell people that if you start to wander into stories, I will interrupt you. And I'm not speaking to anyone directly, I'm speaking to everyone, because, well, now there are 5. So we have still lots of people that would like to speak, and the board hasn't really taken time to parse through this and see if there's any consensus or any messages or things that we want to say directly to this work. So I'm gonna, one person we haven't heard, 2 people we haven't heard from. I'm going to go to them first, and then people we haven't heard from, I'm going to ask you to wait and to consider. So Mark Spino, please.
Thanks. I appreciate the conversations happening tonight. I would just respectfully request that principals get their eyes on this document that's being discussed tonight. It's hard to participate in the discussions when we haven't seen the document. That's all. Thanks.
That's an experience that school boards have a lot, which we're all trying to remedy. Thank you, Mark. Robin.
Thanks. I just wanted to quickly say, I know that a lot of the stuff in this document is recommendations that will be possibly played out at the school level by the staff and principals as they see fit to work that into their own schools. But there is one thing in this, at least one, that is about specifically an action that the board could undertake. So I just wanted to highlight that quickly, which is the idea of social workers. I think especially if you're trying to not have doing this really, really necessary outreach to marginalized families without delaying the start of the school year, we can't really be relying on the teachers themselves to be doing all of that work while teaching all of the stuff that they're doing, and that the schools that do, the Brattleboro-based schools that have social workers have a great advantage over the other schools because they have social workers that can do a lot of that work. So one of the asks in this is that there be additional social worker positions added to the district. And this is one of the great advantages of a merged district that, you know, Dummerston doesn't have to be able to afford or hire their own social worker, but that we could hire some more people at the district level that could serve those smaller schools that maybe couldn't afford in their own budget to hire one. So that was all I just wanted to mention.
Thanks, Robin. Janaki, I'm going to let you speak for a second time. I invite you to speak for a second time. I ask you please to be concise.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Yeah, concise. First of all, I very much support what the Superintendent Andy said, that we should not silo things and that we should pay attention. Second is that the social worker argument that Robin made. I think we should not just look at the date. Yes, let's agree that it's that date. But let the leaders of this board, as well as superintendent and so on, to really commit to the internal cohesion and points made in the document. 40% and more of poverty is not you know, it's very serious. So if you all could make a big voice moral statement, if you like, about the fact that we should do this, and also accept the idea of teams so that the social workers and the teams and the teachers could really individualize the children and make them into a community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I see a couple of board members, so I'm just going to take these as they sign up. So Liz, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I would like to know from Andy how getting all the kids connected to the internet is going, because it mentioned, you know, with online learning, if they're not connected, they're excluded. So I was wondering how that piece of it was going, because I know Comcast, you know, their merger, they're still working on getting people hooked up and switched over. So can you give us an update on who you've reached out to and how many kids have been or are being connected?
I'll defer to Paul. I will say I put in a parent update last week. I think it was either last week or the week before, that there's a state grant that will provide families up to $3,000 to connect the internet line to from the road if they're near a drop point. And then I'll let Paul continue on with the explanation around the work with Comcast and what's going on out there.
And this is ongoing as well. So Paul, I'd ask you also to be brief, please.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, two groups of people. One, folks who don't have the lines running to their house to get broadband internet that's 25 megabits down. That's a handful of families. We have reached out to each and every one of those families and informed them of the grant possibility. It's a grant that is between a family and an internet service provider, and we're following up with those families. Some of those solutions have already begun to happen. Majority of students who report struggling, or families that report struggling with internet, it really ends up being an individual response, but we do have some options to get families hooked up free or at very low cost, and we are currently engaged in conversations with Comcast to formalize some agreements on that.
Great, thank you.
Wait a second. Have you reached out to VTEL or Fairpoint? or let's not call it Fairpoint anymore.
Sure, it's
Because-
Consolidated. We have reached out to Consolidated, not to VTEL. VTEL doesn't, serves a few of our folks, but the vast majority are Consolidated.
Thank you. Anne?
Thank you. I am also a member of this committee, though I claim no credit for this work, and thank you for the work that you did. I'd just like to remind everyone that most of the things included in this document are part and parcel of the ongoing commitment to diversity that this board made on June the 1st, July the 1st, rather. We may not be able to address everything in this document, but I urge us to at least attempt to address everything in this document, because this is what we agreed to. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. Jillian? Yeah, you
Hi,
need to
thank you.
unmute. Thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks. I honestly, my thoughts aren't fully formed on this. I'm not sure entirely what I want to say, but I work directly with youth who either recently graduated out of the school district or are still students within it. And I know that quite a few of them have expressed that they don't feel safe with the thought of returning back to school. I appreciate that there is a lot of this, that there's these efforts to try and make sure that the students are really getting all of their needs met, but that it is very much a challenging thing to do as well. And I don't know, I think I'm just hoping for there to be ways for students as you move into the school year to be able to have the opportunities to continue to express their needs and their feelings as they're going through this process, and that there is space for self-advocacy throughout all of this, and that really, yeah, their voices and their concerns are being prioritized. I've heard various members of the youth state that they haven't felt really involved in this process, that like they feel as if a lot of the focus is more on having their parents be supported or teachers, but it's not, and of course that's all supposed to help support them, but I have heard various members of the youth say that they themselves aren't feeling like directly connected to that, or that they aren't feeling directly supported. So I don't know if there's ways for that to kind of become a focus as well, because these youth, they have voices, they have thoughts, they have opinions, and this is their lives that this is affecting. So I don't know exactly what could be done around that, but I think that's worth mentioning and seeing if there's ways to create that space and support for them in that regard. I think that is the main point that I want to say at this time. I appreciate everything else that's been brought forth. That's really it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian. Sean?
I think that a lot has been discussed here that is so important. And, you know, I really don't want to be the bad guy, but on the other hand, if the last sentence, missing the September 8th date, may be necessary in everyone's best interest. And so I question that if I receive an email from a parent whose student is not going to be able to start on the 8th because school is no longer going to start on the 8th, that's not in everyone's best interest. So I'm just relaying, you know, emails that I received. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
I don't think, I'm sorry, Andy.
Go ahead, Michaela.
I'm calling you Andy Dave. I don't think that is a huge sticking point. And I don't think that I mean, to me, it says so much more than that I'm sure if we met again, people would be happy to take that out. in everyone's best interest. I don't see it as a huge, like, if that is a huge problem, I don't see it as something that has to stay and that anyone would argue is important. The most important thing is being in touch with families, is supporting our teachers and staff, and just being there and being present. So yeah, I have no problem, and I'm sure no one else would, if we brought it to a vote taking that line out. I don't think that that's a, but the crux of it is, what can we do as a community? And I very much agree with Andy that work shouldn't be done in silos, that equity should be centered all the time. And that is our work, is to look out for our most vulnerable and marginalized. And in doing that, that's everyone's work and everyone benefits. It's the same thing that I think Timothy was saying about work against racism. Like, anti-racism work is not just people of color's problem. It impacts everyone. And so when we're anti-racist at the core, that helps everyone and supports everyone. And so that is, I don't know if that's helpful, but thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop this for the moment and make a couple of observations. And I want to point out again, as I said in the beginning, that our responsibility as a board is to make sure the schools are well run and that our learners are learning. And the intimate details of that are for us, are not really ours. That's not really our work. Our work is to get information, to provide leadership and guidance based on the values and the needs and the communications received from the community. And I think in this case, there are a couple of things that we can, well, I would suggest that we consider as statements of our perspective. And there are a whole bunch of things, but I think the two that stood out that aren't really specific things, like who's with the unmasked kids. That's really not, that's not something that we know enough to make a decision about. We definitely want the administrators and the staff to be figuring out how that's going to work. So it wouldn't make any sense for us to say anything about that, except that we want everybody to be safe. So those kind of specific things, I think, are beyond what we can do right now. But we certainly can say that I think all were impressed with the point of, or the importance of centering equity in the most vulnerable children, and centering the reopening process around those children, with the knowledge that will make it better for everybody. I don't think there's any question about that. And I think that, well, I'll ask board members to weigh in on that, but I would suggest that that's a message that we would want Andy to take to the staff next week, when all the teachers are there and all those voices are in the room to be heard, and all of those perspectives and all that work is going to be done. And I just want to, and so that is one thing, one message I think that that's appropriate for us to comment on, or to make a statement about. And the other is that our schools are unique, and the cultures in the schools are different, and we like that and we support that and we want that to continue. And at the same time, access to the supports that our most vulnerable students needs to be addressed across all the schools. It has to be happening in each of the schools. And the specific things that I know are already going on, because I've seen proposals for people's 1% work in the summer, and I've heard reports of things that people are working on. So I know that project-based learning, outdoor activities, and aligning social service supports are underway. And I think that for us to reinforce those efforts as highly engaging activities that are likely to keep the kids that we're most worried about engaged. And so we're basically asking Andy well, I'm suggesting that we consider, and to ask Andy to keep people focused on centering the equity activities around the most vulnerable children, and to as great an extent as possible to develop more project-based learning outdoor activities and make sure that social service supports are around. I just want to point out that developing a decent remote lesson, but an hour's worth of a remote lesson takes about 8 hours. So even with 7 days, if they did nothing else, we wouldn't be able to get it all done. But this is going to be ongoing. And the last item on the agenda, hopefully will provide some additional support, but we'll see where that goes. So those are my two thoughts, that we support very specifically centering equity on the most vulnerable children, centering reopening plans around the most vulnerable children, and that this is addressed across all schools. That it's not some schools doing it and others not, or some doing a little and some not so much. That it be very consistently and conscientiously applied across all the schools. So that's my attempt to try and sum this up in the context of what the board responsibility is. So I'd love to hear from board members about your perspectives, if you're still awake. Sean?
Yeah, I would just say that what you just said, what you synthesized all my feelings into what you just said. So I think those two items that you coalesced were very well put, heartfelt, and is exactly the way I feel about what has been discussed. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Jackie?
Annabelle is not, but I also wanted to echo what Sean said. Very well said, and thank you for summarizing it that way. I agree with you, David.
Thanks, Jackie. Other board members?
David?
Yes, go ahead, Liz. I didn't see your hand.
I didn't get to my hand. I don't know if it's going to come up later, but what Robin said about social workers and outlying schools not having them, I don't know if that's coming up later, but Putney has a high degree of poverty, and I know last year the school counselor was out straight, and you know, it's just a question of time, and hopefully that discussion will come up about maybe getting some more social workers, because to expect school staff with that many kids who are at risk is kind of just too much, especially for a school with 200 kids.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? Well, I'm not going to put this into a motion because I know that I've talked enough with Andy. I know he recognizes the importance of this, and I don't think we need to try to articulate this in a motion. So I think we'll leave it here, and we've got nearly 500 employees returning to work in a few days, and the administrators have been working for months creating structures for them to function and develop and prepare. And fortunately, I think we have 7 in-service days ahead. So that's a lot, although it's nowhere near enough. But I think that's enough. We'll move on to our last item, unless anyone has anything else to add.
David, I have a hiring piece to run by you, and then a handful.
Oh, thanks. Yep, thanks for the reminder. Yep.
A handful of executive session items that can be all done under one.
Great. Great. Okay, let's do those right now, and then we'll talk a minute about the legislature.
You want the hiring right now?
Yeah, because I'll forget again, and then you'll have to remind me again.
So Steve Perrin is recommending the appointment of Peter Canizero as the Dean of Students at BUHS. Peter replaces former Dean of Students Christopher Day, who accepted the assistant principal due to the resignation of a former assistant principal. Peter has been the department chair for English. He'll remain in that position. This is a 1-year appointment for this particular role. And so Steve is putting forth that position for approval.
Last I recall, I thought we had decided that we weren't going to fill that position.
I think he had that, I didn't think we had reached a distinct conclusion on that. And when speaking around that was when there was concern around the budgetary aspect of it. And I think that, I thought my sense was that it kind of solidified.
No, I'm not sure what to do. Can we put this off for 2 weeks so we get a chance to talk about it and kind of review the history and the decision and
Yeah.
It's not something I think we should. It's about a position and people, and I don't think it's something we want to do in open session.
Yeah, we can
Would
do that.
be okay, thank you. Great. Are there others?
That was the only hiring. Then I just have some executive session items to review.
Okay. Okay, great. So the last item on the agenda is something I put on, and it having to do with the legislature, they're going to be meeting again, I believe in a week or so, and they're going to be having to create the budget for the rest of the year, which is going to keep them busy. They only passed a 3-month budget. I think most people are aware. They also are going to consider a request from the governor to remove 5 student days from the 175 to make up for the 5-day postponement of the opening of school. And so that we will wind up ending at the same time in the spring, assuming that we're still, assuming that we get through the year. But I wanted to ask the board's support to, and for me to permission to represent the board in encouraging the House and Senate Ed committees to consider reducing the number of student days significantly more, so that we would have a lot more opportunities for teachers to do the kind of reflecting and collaborating and creating that we talked about tonight in terms of reopening, and that we talked about a month ago in terms of being able to really reflect and move forward on the commitment to equity and social justice. And if we don't create time and space for that to happen, it'll be very difficult for it to proceed. Never mind either of those things for us to do it nearly as well. And I think that asking for significantly more opportunities for teachers to work together would be useful. And but that's what I think. And so I wanted to hear from Andy, and I wanted to hear from any other administrators that are around, and any teachers that are in the room, and also the board members' thoughts about that. There are several other chairs around the state that are encouraging or thinking of doing it. And Dan MacArthur, who was one of the Windham County representatives to the VSBA, has brought that up with the VSBA board, and they're thinking about promoting it. So I wanted to get some just get some feedback and see if that's something that the board thought was worth pursuing. So I see Kelly and Sean. So go ahead, Kelly. Nice to hear you again.
Thank you. So I think that it's a great idea to have at least have that flexibility. So I mean, we could, in 2 months' time, this could poof and all go away, and the kids are all back in school and hunky-dory great, and then we wouldn't have to worry about that. But if this situation does extend significantly, and then we're into the spring, and it would be nice to have the flexibility that if that became necessary, we could sort of work with the numbers and maybe then, I mean, I suppose in the spring, if where the kids are back in school, we're not necessarily, I foresee that we may not need as many days for the teachers to be doing so many planning things, and that would be great, but it would be nice to have the flexibility if that does happen. So I think not necessarily saying that we need this to be this way, but just having the flexibility to if we needed to.
Thank you, Kelly. That's a really great addition to the idea. That's terrific. Sean.
Yeah, I agree with what Kelly just said. And one of the things that crossed my mind is it would be too bad to take school days away from students unless it was absolutely critical. So I'm sure there are, a lot of students, let's say you're a senior, you're trying to tie everything together in your last year. And if every day that you take away from that as a student is jeopardizing some education for students. So, thank you.
Thank you. Andy.
I would encourage that the board support David speaking out upon the reduction of student days. We've just heard for an extensive amount of time about the amount of professional development and capacity building that we need to do with amongst our staff and all our faculty. And so here we have this ideal time where we can start crafting that out and really leverage this time to move the district forward in the direction we want to see it going.
Thank you. Deb?
Yeah, I just want to, it's exciting, David. I just want to advocate for the more we are able to allow time for teachers to collaborate and build their knowledge and have the space to really delve into developing their skills around the kinds of things that have been talked about exactly tonight. It will bring the education we're able to offer our students forward far further than the equivalent of those days.
Thank you, Deb. Corey Sorensen?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that because I've been working on a team with another teacher for the last few years, and just especially in times like that, like now, where social distancing is really unhealthy for people, we're isolated. I think it's really important for us to be able to be together and supporting each other and working with each other. There were some challenges working on a team as well, but I think if we shared students and shared and even having like some flexibility with mixed ages with students, and I think a lot of people, a lot of teachers in this district would probably want to do that and be excited and inspired by doing that. So I support it.
Thank you, Corey. Ann?
I move that this board authorize David Scholes to speak on its behalf to the legislature to advocate for an alteration in the school calendar, reducing the number of student days.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the board approve by testifying to reduction of student day, encouraging further reduction of student. I'll send this to you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Current reduction of student days, to have the flexibility to reduce student days if needed as the year goes on for additional professional development. Is that what you intended, Liz?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to support you.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. It was Ann that made it.
Yeah.
But you have to
Yes,
agree
that
too.
was my intent, Dave.
Great. Thank you. Encouraging flexibility. Okay. Any other comments? Michaela?
I just want to add to that, and I would think that having more time for teachers to collaborate is essential, and it makes student education even better. But also, in addition to that, that student-teacher collaboration does not necessarily mean a loss of school days for students, that we can think of alternative programming that bolsters education so that it doesn't automatically mean loss. And so the more we think out of the box, the more we center learning and student experience in the world, the more possibilities we have. So that when we plan this far enough in advance, that students will have some other constructive activities to do. They won't just necessarily need to be at home because we are having professional development days.
And some of those days could be spent developing asynchronous activities for them to do on those afternoons or those days. Great, thank you. Sean.
Yeah, from what Michaela just said, I would support the, I'll probably vote yes. I was going to abstain, but I think she made a good point.
Thank you. Just want to point out there are still 57 people here. I assume you are all Vermonters and you all have legislators. And if you would let them know that you think this is important, it would go a long way toward making this happen. I also want to point out that the school district pays dues to the Vermont Principals Association, the Vermont Superintendents Association, and the Vermont School Business Managers Association. Sometimes based on the contracts with the administrators, and I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it's taxpayer money that goes there, and those organizations it would be excellent if the members of those organizations would also lobby them if they're in support of this as well, because they're the ones that actually get to sit in or get invited to those meetings. I have to ask to be there, and they don't always say yes afterwards. So anyway, just encourage everybody to contact their lobbyists or their legislators as well. I don't see any more comments, so I would like to ask all those in favor of supporting my testimony, encouraging flexibility in the reduction of student days if needed as the year goes on to enable more professional development days. Please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, the motion passes. We need to go into executive session. Thank you very much for that. We have to go into executive session. I believe we have a student issue and a contract. Is it Frank, or is it labor relations with employees? Or not Frank, I'm sorry, Andy. Oh,
Sorry,
you're
I thought I had a contract, but I'm hearing word that I do not think we need to do employee contracts. But
okay,
it's
so
under student issue. I guess it would
okay.
be records or whatever the student issue has to be.
Great. Okay, so so I move we enter into executive session under 1 VSA 313 to discuss a student. Where is it? Yep. It's under private and, oh, come on, where is it? Well, it's personnel and student. I can't find the right word for it. And we'd like to invite the town manager the superintendent into the meeting. Any other administrators need to join us?
No.
Okay. So can I have a second, please?
I second it.
Thank you, Thomas. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, so we will come out of executive session. I don't believe there'll be any action. If there is, Wendy and Rich, do you want to go into the waiting room?
Yeah, sure, David. And you'll probably need me when you come out of executive session, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll hang around. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I would like waiting room also, please.
Okay, Rich, I will move you over. And I'm going to pause the recording now. So it'll be in the video, and Wendy is still with us.
It's
so
true.
It'll be in the minutes. So why don't you go ahead, Ruby, and
Sure.
share what the non-agenda. I'm really sorry. I just
That's
got
okay.
to the bottom and didn't look any further.
Sorry to interrupt. So we're doing public non-agenda items right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
An abbreviated one.
Right. So is it my turn now? Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Ruby McAdoo, Putney Central School. And I sent an email to David and to Liz earlier today or yesterday, and specifically because of the recent announcement by Governor Scott around funding for expanded healthcare. And the reason that I'm bringing it up at the board level, I will be speaking to Herv, our local principal. As I mentioned before, I work with Putney Mutual Aid as a volunteer, and so we're, as a community group, trying to think about creative ways to serve our community. The reason I'm bringing it up at this level is that with the Programmatic Equity Committee, you have been looking at aftercare and after bell activities across the district for a while. And I think that the things that are coming up right now are both the aftercare options and the remote learning options for the days when the hybrid kids are remote. And those are two separate things. And I want to understand, I think what I heard from Governor Scott's announcement was that there was support for regional hubs for learning centers specifically related to the remote learning option. And to me, a regional hub and center without really integrated involvement from the school district is it's just not going to fly. It's not going to happen. And so that concerns me, because I know you guys are all working really hard and you got a lot going on and there's so many balls in the air, but there's something like $12 million that will go like that. And I'm really concerned that it will go like that, and the majority of that funding is going to go to outside of Burlington, frankly. And so I'd like to put a call out to this board to kind of formalize or get some kind of action plan or a subcommittee or something that would focus on childcare specifically in relationship to the crisis that we're dealing with now and the hybrid learning model. I think that's something we should have had for a while, but I'm just not willing to bother my principal about a million things. And so I haven't pushed and pushed and pushed, but with this announcement of funding, I don't think I can wait anymore on pushing. And I know that for Putney, we do not have, and there is no intention to have, aftercare and after the bell, any kind of support for aftercare. And that's disconcerting to me, but I'm willing to like back off of that. But I think that if I backed off and didn't push on this, I'm really afraid that we would be missing a funding opportunity. And so I wanted to flag that. So I realize there's no action and that's a non-agenda item, but I would love for this to be an agenda item. And I don't know how to do that. And so I call on you guys as board members to consider it.
Brody?
I haven't looked into this at all. And I looked at the articles in the paper, but it sounds like it's something that the governor's put together, and the guidelines and the specs for it are all in place. I just ask Andy if this is something that's come our way or that we have any role in whatsoever, other than lobbying our legislators the way that we would under other things that don't come under our purview.
Yeah, my understanding, David, is that this is something that groups have lobbied the legislators to get, but this is really this is not something really associated with the schools. I would think that if there were money involved that the schools could get, Frank would be all over it. Frank finds whatever fund sources are available. He would have been all over that. I mean, it's the issue of childcare is critical around it, but I think my sense and read on it, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, is that this was really more for the private organizations that were providing school-age childcare, and not the public schools doing that level of work. And this is a part where it becomes a bit mission creep from schools. The central and core value of the schools in the role of the board and working with the schools, ensuring that the schools are well run, school-age childcare is a part that is connected in some extent, but usually they're connected in a way of like having an RFP for aftercare services, for instance, and providing space to something. But it's really not something typically a school system would be deeply involved in. And I think the funding mechanisms were more designed for, how private agencies or private entities could staff up or increase their hours of support. I mean, there was also some language around expanding the amount of hours available for
Home-based.
Going from 4 hours to a longer amount, to longer days.
Yeah, I can speak to this a little.
Wait, Liz, wait. This is the hearing from the public on non-agenda items, and we don't necessarily respond to them. And I'm asking you not to respond to it. And Andy can give our the perspective in terms of what the school has heard about from the state. But I want to just stay with the model that we use here. So Tara, again, if you would be concise, please.
Yes, thanks so much. Non-agenda item. I've heard lots of people still saying that special education has not been communicated in regards to 504 and IEPs to all students. I know for me personally, I chose a hybrid model. 100% reason is because my kids would be with teachers from other schools, and that to me was not something I was looking forward to in having to re-educate new teachers on my children's IEPs and 504s. And in that regards, I know it was brought up earlier, but I'm very stressed as a parent hearing about the teacher and how teachers will be allocated at Putney for both cohorts, and remote learning will be run through a para who is following instructions from said teacher. And I understand that Putney is in a unique position that we don't have enough teachers, but I feel like this is something, as a parent who's an essential worker, my children are going to be in class 2 days a week, and that same teacher is going to be in class the other 2 days with another set of students, and that opens up the game for contamination. And I'm not saying anyone would do it maliciously or anything like that, but kids are kids, and so I hope that there's a very, very, very good plan for disinfecting and notifying parents, which I have heard is not actually going to happen unless it falls within 6 feet and you've been in contact with someone for more than 10 minutes, which is not the goal in reopening the school. So therefore, if someone's sick, it's not necessarily going to trickle down to the people that it needs to trickle down to. So I do think this plan needs to be really delved into and understood to all the parents on what's happening. Thank you.
And again, I'm not sure if you were here at the beginning, but I mentioned that most of the information that about the things you raised is the place to raise that is the principal in your building. They're the people that have the most information, know the most of what's going on, and are most able to articulate or explain that. So, thank you, and I apologize again for missing the.
David, this is Kevin O'Connor. I have a quick question.
Okay.
In addition to everything that you guys are dealing with, I'm getting a couple of calls from people who are wondering, I know that this high school had some public hearings about the name kernel. They're asking, is there going to be a decision made, and if so, when? Who answers that question?
No, the answer is no. We're not taking that up. It hasn't come on our agenda. It's unlikely to make it on our agenda for a good long time. And so the answer is no.
Okay, I just think people would appreciate knowing that. So thank you for letting me know.
Well, feel free to tell them. Any other comments of items, non-agenda items from the public? Okay, then I will ask again that we vote to go into executive session. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so we will enter executive session at 9:13 because I still have to remove some computers that are still running. Yep, we will rise from executive session. Let's see. So we will rise from executive session at 9:35, taking no action. And Rich, I left the recording on for the first part of executive session, so would you please delete that before you put it up?
We will try.
Or maybe I can delete when I make my copy. Well, no, I can't because you don't use my copy. My copy's the backup.
Yeah, it's easy to cut.
Good, thank you. Yeah, there's really nothing after we went into executive session except, you know, we're going to go out of business. So, Ann, would you take us out of business, please?
Mr. Chairman,
Well done.
there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
I second.
Sean seconded it physically distanced. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you, folks. We only went to 9:30. That's not so bad.
Thank you, David.
That was good.
Stay well,
great.
everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
all.
folks. Take care.